I asked Marlon to come along because at the end of this really intense day of presentations, we've gone right through the stack. We've looked at every layer in the whole content delivery ecosystem. We've taken that right up to the top and looked at new markets emerging, such as coming out of Asia and potentially the markets in Asia that we could address. But one thing I thought was really missing when I looked back at the program was to get somebody who's looking at implementation and bringing this all together in real world solutions and so on. So we got in touch with Globant, and Marlon is going to talk a little bit about implementation strategies within the CDN environment. Marlon, over to you.
Great, thanks, Dom. And are you able to see my presentation screen sharing?
Yep, absolutely fine. Perfect.
Fantastic. Yeah, so thanks for the intro, Dom. As you mentioned, my name is Marlon Montgomery. I am a technology director at Globant in our media practice. So we're a SI and app developer, and we have lots of various practices in studios, so please do check us out. My plan today was to talk a little bit about CDN implementation strategy, more on if you should go multi or private or hybrid, single CDN, etc. I'll cover a couple quick cases at a high level. One that didn't go so well, or at least at the beginning had a couple struggles based on some of the factors involved, and then one that was a little bit more strategic. And then I'll go through my wish list of about 10 items that I'd like to see. So diving right in. So at Globant, we generally have two types of clients. I'd say about 80% of our clients that come to us are either a greenfield, newly launching OTT service, right? So they don't have any history in the space, and they might not be as mature on the technical side, so they might not have a solution architecture, and we have to run them through the discovery process and consulting them on different strategies and building that solution architecture for them. Everything from the transcoding and encoding to the delivery and the building of the apps. These companies typically come to us, right, and they say, can you build us apps on all these devices? Go. We're launching in 3 months, not thinking about that technical back end. The second big chunk of our clients are the large broadcasters and operators and satellite providers that are out there, the tier ones, right? And these companies typically come to us with existing legacy partners and integration requirements based on contracts and deals that they have signed in the past and vendors that they're familiar with. And that sometimes comes with issues as well. And most of the time, it's sometimes the CDN selected or the strategy selected might not really be suitable for their particular job at hand that they're trying to do. As you've heard throughout the day, right, there's nothing new here. The trends continue of traffic, quantity, and quality of content is exploding. There's a commoditization of CDNs through the falling costs, which is resulting in CDNs taking new strategies by adding additional services and offerings on top of just being a CDN, right? And that is, like we just heard about over the last two presentations, going out to the edge, maybe providing hybrid CDN mesh strategies and niche specializations, like perhaps live streaming for media in a particular region. So with all these falling prices and the additional integrated services and value that you're getting for these CDNs, doesn't it make sense for everyone just to go with a single public CDN instead of like dealing with the overhead and costs of building your own private CDN, even though that cost is going down, right? There's still tons of overhead and management there. Or building some kind of hybrid private public, that's a mess to manage as well. Or is multi-CDN the best option? I think personally, multi-CDN has become the best practice, again, depending on the scenario and the current state of the industry, as there are still some gaps and complexities that need to be considered with going with a single public CDN. And like I mentioned, that overhead cost that comes with managing your own private CDN. So of course, at the end of the day, the decision needs to be driven by factors such as the required functional and non-functional requirements that you have for the CDNs. That could be volume of traffic, geographical distribution of your users, so what regions are you targeting, key metrics for QoE, QoS, and cache hit miss ratios, and so on. And of course, at the end of the day, it comes down to low latency, availability, security, and actionable analytics in the media OTT space. So the first case I'm going to dive into a little bit is a tier 1 broadcast satellite provider that was launching across Latin America, the entire, pretty much Latin America. And they came to us with an existing streaming provider, so somebody that does their transcoding and encoding for them, and preferred CDN that they've been working with and wanted to continue with. So a little bit background. So LATAM is a difficult, fragmented market. There is no solid single CDN across the region that does everything extremely well. And this particular client was doing a lot of live streaming, right, as a broadcaster, aggregator. And they had different needs than your standard CDN of serving static web content, right? So those CDNs, static content needs cheap and widely distributed nodes, whereas if you're doing live streaming, you need really well-powered and connected nodes. And not many of the CDN vendors exist in LATAM that can do that well. So as I mentioned, this first case had a couple challenges. The first was that we were at the beginning experiencing quite a few issues with live streams in certain areas, buffering and stream areas. And this is because of the workflow that the streams were getting passed through. So to lay it out, the streams were getting transcoded and encoded in the US, by this particular provider or partner, doing the encoding, transcoding, and then they were sending it to a CDN origin, also located in the US, right? And then the CDN was using a public internet to distribute that content to all the edge locations in across Latin America. So obviously it's not the ideal scenario, and that's why we're seeing that buffering and streaming errors that we were seeing there. And eventually we implemented a solution with private direct connects from the transcoding provider to the CDN's origin that they had set up in LATAM. The second kind of challenge on this project was the optimization that we had to work with with the CDN for getting live playback to work as expected. There are a lot of latency issues, and we had many cases of that network traffic not being optimally routed through their network, right? So if they were in Brazil, the traffic would hop down to Argentina, then Chile, then wherever, right? There were definitely not ideal routes, and that was all configuration. So we spent quite a bit of time having to sit down with the CDN, spending our client's budget on professional services for both our time and the CDN's time. But at the end of the day, we did get it sorted out. But again, a challenge when that work is not done up front. The third on this case was that the CDN that we were working with was lacking tools that let us explore the data on a device and region specific way, or device and region based. And we were seeing a variety of client player errors through the first couple months of the launch. And we were racking our brain on what's going on here. So for example, we had some players that were never requesting a bit rate on playback, just air it out. And then other players that were only requesting the highest bit rate. And this was all device and player specific combinations. So all of these kind of issues that we were seeing could have been diagnosed and resolved and triaged a lot earlier if we had those tools available, to explore the data related to how clients are actually consuming those streams from the CDNs, and being able to separate by device type and OS type and any particular region. And to finish that story in that case, we did work with that CDN and get the reporting, but again, it was a challenge to get there, time consumption. So the second case is a premium cable channel that you all know, that recently launched a new OTT service, and they've been around the block, and that they had a specific strategy that they wanted to employ with multi-CDN, and a number of business logic requirements that would go into this multi-CDN strategy. So like I said, it's premium channel. We had built a multi-CDN switcher that used a set of business rules and that were built into the service. And we were also analyzing QoS and QoE analytics that we were collecting, and then that a third party was collecting, and taking all that data and making switching decisions on a per playback kind of time of service, right? And uniquely delivering that optimization on a per user and device basis. So how that worked is, once a valid video manifest request was made, we'd go through those business rules, and they included device and OS-based rules. So was it mobile, was it Android, iOS, what version of the OS? What are the current statistics of the QoE and QoS for a CDN for a particular region, and where the user is currently located? And then prioritization across particular contract priorities, AKA pricing of the various CDNs. And based on all those rules, like I said, right before playback, we would make that CDN decision. So this CDN selected was a cloud-based service. What I'd like to see is taking that to that next level of implementation, and building a client-side service. So perhaps with that CDN selector in a player, you can do midstream CDN switching in a fashion similar to how ABR implementation works. All right, now down to my wish list for all the CDNs out there that are listening, and some of these items exist out there, so it's just the level of maturity and maybe lack of standardization, or depending on the niche that each CDN is targeting, right? But as we covered in the case study, having robust analytics and data exploration tools to see how clients are consuming the streams on a device and region basis is critical for us app developers and SIs to triage and resolve issues. Second, again, going back to the first case study, is there was a lot of sitting down with the CDN and trying to optimize routes and based on region and device, et cetera. It would be very useful if we had a set of out of the box, configurations based on tried and true settings for particular use cases, i.e. streaming live to particular regions on these devices, at least at a high level. Then we could go in, and like I said, fine tune and tweak, because there's no one size fits all. But that would go a long way in having those templates in place. And then there's a lot of ongoing consolidation of CDNs in the industry, and that may continue to help. But I would love to see more partner networks and cooperation between CDNs to fill in the gaps that are there in Latin America and Asia being the two biggest areas or regions of need. Multi-CDN is great, but that can become a bear to manage as well if you have to deal with 10, 15 different CDNs, right? If we can, even with the multi-CDN, cut that down to 2 or 3, that'd be fantastic. And cooperating standards, all of that being in place. A lot of folks are talking about this and implementing already, and we've heard some of this today. But machine learning AI-based routing and caching decisions, going further with those, doing changes in the routing and finding different connection paths on the fly, during midstream, alleviating those bottlenecks will be fantastic. And then the second point of that is doing predictive prefetch, a caching like thing. So calling those videos on the edge during playback or right before playback, reducing the video startup times and lowering those rebuffering rates. And then as we talked about today again as well, the moving things to the edge, transcoding on the edge, especially for adaptive live video streaming for mobile and user-generated content. That would reduce the back-end overhead quite a bit. It's actually pretty fast to transcode on mobile, which you wouldn't expect, and it's not terribly inefficient on the energy side either. Not much more than playback. Then there are some alternatives out there to using the classic CDN approach as well. Multicasting, is quite old, but it's making a little bit of a comeback or a little bit of noise. And then there's the mesh peer-to-peer type strategy as well. But both of those have their own issues as well, or hurdles that we need to overcome. It's going to be pretty difficult, but if somebody can figure out how to do ABR on multicasting, that'd be huge. And then on the peer-to-peer mesh side, doing server-side add-in integration and per stream watermarking, that's not easily doable or doable at all right now, and that would take that far as well. And then, of course, improving security features. There's a number of items there, everything from theorem, etc. tokens, but the one thing that's on my mind recently from a recent deployment is stream takedown. So being able to easily do that via the CDN, maybe using ML and AI to help analyze this as well, and making it easy to take down individual streams for accounts. And this is actually a big issue in Latin America for a couple services, streaming illegal sports streams, not only personal, but a lot of bars, etc. down there. And then please, everyone's talking about ultra low latency and doing that at scale, and I'd love to see that, but let's please have some level of standardization and work together to make that a little less painful than some of the other decisions we have now in terms of protocols, etc. And that is my list, and that is my short, high-level presentation.
That was awesome, Marlon. Thank you so much. There's I just have Eric's just posting my what do we end up calling it? My back to school letter, which is a list of things that I hope the industry addresses. But I think yours put mine to shame there somewhat. There's a lot of things you'd like to correct. So let's just pick up on the very last point. What standardization would you like to see in the ultra low latency space if there was one thing?
It'd be the format. Every protocol format. I mean, again, it's kind of like the streaming protocols, right? Everybody has their flavor. I mean, it's kind of come down to HLS kind of being the winner there, but ideally there's a similar path there where Keith is calling. Sorry about that. Well, at least where we can align around one or two, and then again, standardization around that, so it's not based on a particular device or platform or going with a particular CDN. Some of the CDNs have their own formats, protocols that they're backing, which are great because they're actually moving forward and making this a reality, but it's not aligned with everyone else in the industry. They're more proprietary.
So I think if there was, if I sort of took one thing away from the presentation there, I think the message there is, despite all of the amazing developments and coming together of the industry to create a complete ecosystem in the CDN space, there are still, from an integrator's point of view, there are still many gaps that need to be plugged and pulled together before this is an easy thing to deliver.
That's correct. Yeah. It's not getting any easier, especially as that content is exploding, and the quality of that content. As we're talking about,
on the upside, on the upside, it keeps so it's probably no bad thing if there's a few gaps left for us to plug with a few devices. So. Exactly. Listen, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to have you on, and thank you for wrapping the presentations for us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and for the support.
Not at all. It's been brilliant.